Hello everyone and welcome back to Factorio. Way. Again, this will just be an update episode. I will probably mark these separately. These are just, the building projects are on too big of a scale to do it all on camera. I do a bunch of this stuff in streams. And yeah, I'm currently working on basically connecting stuff up. It's almost ready to go, so yeah, as you can see, I've done quite a bit of stuff. Not sure if I've already shown you this, but the iron smeltery now also, in addition to the input trains, which yeah, the first locomotives here are all black now instead of red. That doesn't matter. There's a reason why they're black, but I basically set all the train stops to be black, and I kind of just ran past and pasted the setting, including the name and all that. But it must have also pasted the color information onto the locomotives. Not that it really matters. They're just, I don't know. Some of them will have black locomotives now. Doesn't matter. But yeah, they now also have output trains, which look basically identical to the input trains, except I actually forgot to flip all of these inserters, so I'll have to do that. But basically, yeah, I also need to change these into requester chests. Wow, I have been lazy in building this. I just copy pasted and never bothered to check. Interesting. Anyway, yeah, these will be requester chests requesting iron plates, and these stack inserters will turn the other way, and then any train driving in here will be filled with iron plates. And I've also added a train stacker, so more trains than those 16 can wait to be filled. And I've connected the output in pretty much the exactly same way as I've done it on this side here, only obviously kind of flipped over. And it's all connected to, go away pollution, it's all connected to this one line down here, which basically the start of my main line. I've also filled all of this with landfills. I'm still missing a chunk over here, but that's not too bad. I'll fill that, I don't know, soonish, because I still have some stuff left to do. But yeah, I'll fill that when I need to, and then that will be the iron, the copper, the fuel for the trains, and the oil, which is here, basically done. I still need something that processes stone, and I may want a storage facility for uranium. The reason why is I have when I created this world, I kind of played around with the ore generation settings, and it didn't, it's not perfect. Basically, I've got a lot of these overlapping ores. I've mentioned this before, but you can see a lot of this, just ores kind of bleeding into each other, like this. There's iron and copper right next to each other here. And so when I set up my mining stations, I hate having to leave some of the resource that I actually want behind. So, do I have something in radar range somewhere that... I'm looking for a double patch somewhere in radar range so you can see... This'll do, this is fine. So here, if I want to mine the iron but I have no need for the copper, then there's no way I can place the miners so that I only get the iron and none of the copper. Either I will get some that also get copper, or I will have to leave some of the iron behind, and neither of those are particularly tempting options for me. I should have not played around with the settings as much. I should have kept the should have made the ore patches more rare, so they're not as close to each other. But well, what can you do? I've messed it up now, and I can't fix it anymore. But yeah, that means that there will be patches like this, where I mostly want the copper, but there will be some miners that also get the stone. It's not really a problem, as long as I have a way to get rid of the stone. And if there's even something that very slowly consumes stone, then over time it might be sort of backed up on stone, because it's only very slowly consuming the stone. But given enough time, it'll eventually go through all the stone, even if it's backed up, and I will also have gotten rid of all of the copper in that particular case. And that's kind of what I'm looking for. It won't be a massive amount in this case, because I won't place a miner down here where it only gets stone, but I want to be able to get rid of all the copper, and some stone will just come along for the ride, I guess. And I need facilities to get rid of all of those extra ore types. I can set up the train station without much trouble, so they can transport off multiple types of resource. For example, this here might actually transport off stone, coal, and copper. If I decide to use this patch, 11 million copper isn't that great, but you never know. Setting up the station isn't an issue. Setting up the miners isn't an issue also, because I'll use robot mining, so I don't have to do any sort of belt sorting and use filter inserter or anything like that. I will have the miners output into provider chests, and then the robots will just pick up whatever the requested chests want, and that'll be fine. But yeah, I need a way to get rid of some of the stone, which is why over here, maybe I'll need a little landfill, but probably not. There will be a small facility, maybe 5 trains or so, turning stone into stone bricks. I need some stone bricks anyway for some of the items for research, and I'll just make the facility, yeah, probably on the side here. So then I sort of have a central line here for the raw resources, and any new mines I connect will just lead onto this main line and then be distributed to the relevant processing facilities. And yeah, I'll similarly have the main line here where all of the raw products will be put into and then distributed to the various factories, and then again distributed further from those factories to the next ones and so on, because it's quite a long process of processing stuff, if you catch my drift. Yeah, these station names, by the way, are the default ones. I haven't set them to anything yet. It's just the way the game works. Anyway, I need a way to get rid of stone, which will be here, and maybe I'll also set up a uranium station, which would also get iron from somewhere else and then turn the uranium and iron into fuel cells, and I might power a reactor with that. I'm not sure yet. The uranium's slightly rarer than the other ore types, I feel. So it's not as common for me to have to get rid of uranium at the same time as another resource type. It kind of happened here where uranium and copper are next to each other. But the issue is that uranium mining, because it takes sulfuric acid, that would be a whole new issue that I'd need to tackle. So I'm thinking I'll just have a storage facility where I just store a boatload of it, and occasionally I might just blow up the chests and replace it. I don't expect that to fill up quickly anyway. We'll see. But yeah, there needs to be a stone facility here, but it doesn't need to be on anywhere near the scale as my large smelting facilities. It'll just be a small thing that has one input station and maybe 5 train stacker, and 1 output station, and it'll lead on the main line down here. So I'll need to landfill a little more here, but then I had planned to basically, as you can see, I've sort of very crudely drawn a line here, and I'll definitely landfill anything below. And I'll make the coastline here a bit nicer, a little more jagged, so it looks more natural. I might also landfill all the way up to this peninsula here. Anyway, I keep talking about random stuff. Let's go over what's going on here. I haven't powered any of this yet. I wanted to build the entire thing. I'm completely certain I have enough space to put down power poles. I've left enough space everywhere. But if I place it down and power it immediately, then I tend to use too many power poles, which isn't an issue. It doesn't cause any problems, but I would like to be a bit more efficient, at least in this particular station here. It's not as compact as it could be. I left myself space so I can work with that. But yeah, this will be my petroleum gas production. This facility will handle my crude oil. There's a bunch of train stackers over here, because I might have to use a lot of these petroleum trains. And again, some will also have to go to the fuel production, but I think, at least for the near future, those two, this one oil field and this one station and the one train going back and forth will be enough to provide me with fuel, and probably rocket fuel for the main factory as well, for the rockets, for the actual space science. But yeah, the reason I need a lot of stackers is because as the oil wells sort of run dry, it might be that I need, say, 10 oil sources or oil fields to supply to get enough crude oil in, because each individual source will just be very meager. They won't be producing much. But in case anything ever backs up, sorry, bumped my mic there, I need the full amount of trains that are in the system transporting crude oil to be able to fit into the station. And since there's only 2 stations that accept the crude oil, there just need to be a lot of stackers. In addition to that, there will also be need for stackers for the other 2 stations. I haven't set these up yet, but those will be quite simple. They will be pretty much my standard unloading stations, because this station is also where I will put any excess coal. So I don't have any other use for coal really, except for plastic, but I will probably mine that down here, because if I mine the coal up here, I would have to drive it down to the main facility because it's needed to make plastic. But I will probably find coal patches down here. 44 million, 39 million. There's one. I'm not sure yet. The other alternative would be having a sort of depot, because I don't want these 2 train networks to be connected, because it might confuse the trains, and yeah, I just want these to be completely separate. So if I do get the coal from up here as well, then there will have to be just a tiny station. One train goes in and basically unloads into a second train, which can then take the coal down further, and some storage in between, so I've got a buffer. That would be the alternative, but right now the plan is get coal from down here, and any additional coal that I have to get up here, because again there might be something like this where the ore patches are just adjacent, will be transported down here. I probably don't need 2 stations. I'm probably gonna get rid of the outermost one. And the stations are further apart because I wasn't sure how much space I need, because fluid loading and unloading takes a bit more space than just the inserter into chest stuff I can do for the iron and the copper. So this will be coal, and there's a process in this version of Factorio called coal liquefaction, which basically allows you to turn coal into oil products. But yeah, first things first, these will be my unloading stations. By the way, night vision. It's that's why everything's a little sort of grayscale. I will add lights to all this, don't worry. But right now I can record at night and it's watchable. I think it's a bit colorless, but it's fine. And I'm not sure if this design is better than the fluid unloading I've used in the rocket fuel system, but basically this tank and so the first, the third, the fifth, all the odd number tanks are connected to one output pipe, this one, which is pumping from those tanks into the system. And then the even numbered ones, counting from the bottom, second, fourth, sixth, and so on, are connected to this one, and the ones on the other side are connected to this one. So basically each wagon will be unloaded in equal parts into each of the 3 output pipes. I'm hoping this will sort of help a little balancing the wagons. If you remember, the rocket fuel production has the issue of of this, that the trains are not unloaded equally. So these two wagons are mostly full, and these are completely empty. Just because of how I did the fluid unloading, which is yeah, I think it's fine now. I've made this a triple line and there's pumps everywhere, so this might be enough now to actually supply my refineries evenly, but I think this is a better solution. It might not be perfect. I built this completely myself from scratch, so there's probably better ways to do this, but I'm hoping this'll work out. And yeah, same for the other station. I just want to be able to unload two trains at the same time, because I feel it might be necessary. I need a fairly large amount of oil throughput. It might be complete overkill. I haven't actually calculated this. I'm certain it's enough. One station might also be enough, basically. But yeah, I just want to be sure. Plus, if I ever want to scale up the factory, then at least this one here won't need any more upscaling. Everything else will, but you know. Sorry. It's not even that late. I'm just kind of yawning randomly. The 3 lines are then put over here, and these, as you can maybe see from how I've laid the pipe, if you pardon the pun. Yeah, these are all the lines from the stations, all 6 of them. So they're always kept separately, and I'm only really merging them into this line right here. So the first of the 6 gets added to the refineries here, and I'm not sure if this will work out perfectly, but the idea is that this will saturate sort of this refinery right here, which is closest to it, and it'll give some to these 2 and some to these 2, and then I'm adding the next crude oil, which will satisfy sort of these 5 or so maybe. Basically, I keep adding more crude oil to the line in regular intervals to try and sort of even out the amount of crude oil that's supplied to each of the refineries, so I don't get the issue that some of the refineries aren't working at full capacity, because this is 21 refineries, which is the exact number I need for my petroleum gas demand. And then I'm pumping the water in manually from the shoreline over here. I didn't want to add another station just for water processing. I think this is this distance of pumping water is still fine. I don't want to do this over anything much larger than that distance, but this should be fine. That's four offshore pumps. If they're not enough, I can add more to this line. That's not an issue. I will definitely keep myself the option. I will have enough space to do that. And yeah, on the end here, this is the crude oil line. I'm basically dragging it into this tank. So this tank is where the crude oil, the heavy oil output here from all of these 21 refineries will get pumped into this tank. And then I came up with this setup myself. It's probably the standard way to do this. I'm not saying this is in any way a great new idea, but I didn't look this up. I sort of thought about how to do it and did it this way. The reason being, or the problem being, I want to create lubricant, which is made from heavy oil. This is where I make the lubricant. And I want to make I also want to make light oil from the heavy oil, because the lubricant, 2 machines are too much, basically. I think even 1 machine would be too much, but yeah, it doesn't matter. Eventually the lubricant will back up, because I will have 1 train going back and forth, putting lubricant to the 1 station where it's needed. I think I only need it for the electric engine units. These things. And even with only a single chemical plant, I would back up on lubricant. And if that was the only use I had for the heavy oil, then eventually all of these refineries would stop working because I'm not consuming the heavy oil fast enough. However, if I also just ran a line down to these stations here and also converted the heavy oil into light oil via the cracking, I might end up in a situation where the crackers are taking all the heavy oil and there's none left for the lubricant, and I would run out of lubricant. Neither of those are ideal. So I've set it up where all the heavy oil goes into this tank, and this pump here is basically always active. And it'll pump the heavy oil into the lubricant machines, which will make lubricant. They're working quite fast because of all the beacons. They're currently set, they say they're quite slow because the beacons aren't active, so they're not actually adding the speed bonus, but yeah, you get the point. And then there's a second pump, but I've added a circuit network condition to that. So if you see, there's a green wire running from the tank to the pump. And the green wire on a storage tank has only one option. It can read the contents. And it will basically send the contents of this tank into this tiny network. It only has 2 devices connected to it. It's not anything fancy. This is not complicated or anything. But basically this little network now knows how much heavy oil there is in this network, in this tank basically, because it's the only tank connected to the network. And this one here is a condition. This wire basically enables or disables the pump, and I've currently set it so that it's only enabled when there's more than 10,000 heavy oil in the network, which basically means only if this tank is filled up beyond a certain point will this pump turn on, and I will be cracking the heavy oil. And as long as I'm not at that threshold, then only this pump will be able to actually empty this tank, and so all of my heavy oil will go into lubricant, unless lubricant's backed up, in which case the tank will fill up, and this condition will be met, and this pump will be able to empty the tank as well. I think this is quite a good way to do this. It's sort of a priority splitter where the lubricant gets the first crack at the heavy oil, and only when that's completely satisfied will the cracking get some. Yeah, I said crack a lot there, sorry. And then that output gets pumped over here into these 4 machines, cracking the heavy oil into light oil. I think 4 machines is all I need. I'm trusting the spreadsheet on this. I haven't done much calculating here. I've taken numbers from the spreadsheet because everywhere I've calculated them, they were fine. So I'm just going to assume that they are. Yeah, and then here is where I'm cracking the light oil to petroleum gas, because that's all this station is supposed to output: lubricant and petroleum gas. And the only other thing that's really worth mentioning is this coal liquefaction facility here. And coal liquefaction is a bit strange. Wow, I wanted this to be a short episode. I'm explaining too much, but bear with me. It takes coal. Wait, I can see the recipe here. Okay, it takes 10 coal, 25 heavy oil, and 50 steam to make 35 heavy oil, 15 light oil, and 20 petroleum gas. Now, it might seem heavily skewed in favor of the heavy oil, but since it takes 25 and only makes 35, it actually really only outputs 10. Because of the 35 heavy oil that are output, 25 will be needed to run the process again. So, yeah, I basically get 10 heavy, 15 light, 20 petroleum from each process. Oh, cool. Let me just set up these chests quickly. And then, because I'm not expecting a huge amount of coal to come into the station, so there'll only occasionally be some, and most of this will probably not be running 24/7, making this system again much bigger than it needs to be, but you know, it's fine. It might consume a little bit of extra power because it's running even though it's not really needed, but yeah, it's negligible. Again, fully beaconed, just because, and it'll also be fully productivityed. And then the output from these coal liquefaction facilities is gathered up, and the heavy oil output is pumped into this setup here. It's exactly the same as on the other side. Basically the bottom pump here gets priority, which basically pumps heavy oil back into the system, because as you see it outputs heavy oil, but it needs heavy oil again to start the process again. So that I give that priority, and yeah, only when this tank is filled up beyond a certain point, so when I definitely have enough to run the process often enough, will this pump work and add the heavy oil into the heavy oil pipes for the sort of main system. The light oil and petroleum gas, however, I'm just pumping over there instantly, because I don't need that to put back into the process. I can just add that to my output lines, and then yeah, this is all being finally output on these two lines here. These will be where the petroleum gas comes out from all of these. And the steam is just provided in a very simplistic way. I'm running water over here, and then these boilers will be supplied by more coal, which is brought in via train. So basically I'll need some coal to make the steam for this, and some coal because the process needs coal directly. Again, I've not calculated the ratios. Eventually it'll sort of even out where the coal gets consumed as much as it needed, and I think this will work out just fine. Basically, it might be that I technically need twice as much coal in here than I need to make the necessary steam, but that just means that eventually these coal chests will be completely full, and then it'll be balanced again. And yeah, it's nothing to worry about. Each of these machines will get coal, and the ratios aren't important in this particular kind of setup, which is sort of one of the cool things and also annoying things about the robots. I can be really lazy about this. I don't need to calculate ratios and see if I have to split the belts in a particular ratio or anything like that. By just setting up these chests in a very lazy way, just a chest says I want 1,000 coal. In the long run, this will be perfectly fine. Of course, right now, this will never actually run, even if I supplied it with coal, because it needs a starting, sort of a slight smacking, wow. It needs a bit of a smack to get going. There's a bit of startup capital, basically, in the form of the heavy oil. And right now it doesn't have any. It will be self-sufficient eventually, because it produces more heavy oil than it consumes, but it needs to have, critical mass. And so when this is all running, I will eventually just quickly set up a line that pumps a bit of heavy oil from, I don't know, maybe here, and just pumps it down into this system here, and then I'll break that line again, because once I have, say, 1,000 heavy oil in this system here, it will be self-sufficient forever because of how I set up the network condition. It'll never pump itself dry. It just needs to have that Kickstarter. Heavy oil. Okay, that's really about it for the station. I will be filling trains down here. This one will take the petroleum gas. This one will take the lubricant. Again, there's a massive train stacker down here, even though I don't anticipate needing one. But you never know. I basically copy-pasted precisely what I did here and just, just build the same thing again. This doesn't cause any issues if the stacker is too large. If it were too small, that would be problematic, but a stacker being too large is just... The trains will find their way because of the way this is set up. There's no loops or anything like that that would confuse the trains. And the pathfinding is not a problem either, so yeah, I can do this without worrying about it. Okay, so the only thing left to do here, which I'll do until next time, is I have something here that takes in the coal. Remove the second or the fourth station here, which I won't be using, and then I will be putting a stone smelting thing here. I only need, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 furnaces for that, so nothing like this is in any way necessary. And then next to it, I'll probably also have a very tiny setup for storing coal. Again, this doesn't need to be large. It just needs to, storing uranium, that's the one I wanted. Coal, I'll grab from down here. At least that's the current plan. I might change that around. I don't know, but yeah, I'll probably put 1 or 2 storage facilities here for some items that I will get from the mining operation, but have no immediate use for. But yeah, that's it. I'm quite happy with how the oil turned out. It sort of looks quite neat. Again, I could have moved all these things much closer together, but I wanted to leave myself enough room, so if as I was building this, because I'm not building this from a blueprint or anything, I'm building this from scratch, basically making it up as I go along. And if you're doing that, it's very, very good to leave yourself space to not try to squeeze things together tightly, because if it turns out you need more of anything and you've shoved it all together, then you don't have the room to add more of that, whatever it happens to be. So yeah, that's why there's more space here than needed. I could move this whole thing a bunch of blocks to the left and we'd be fine. I could move this whole cracking facility 6 or 7 blocks up. Could move the heavy cracking closer to the light cracking, all of that. But I actually quite like the way these setups work. These are all individual modules that are sort of very regular, but they're also different types of modules that are fit together to make the whole facility do what I want it to do. And yeah, that's it for this episode. I will give this all power, and next time we might have a functioning sort of bare bonesy mega base, and I will definitely take you along for the ride as I design the actual processing stations. The one thing I might still do off camera is the steel smelting, because that'll be quite large. This junction here, I'm sort of going over the time limit, but we're okay. This whole junction here really only serves will only serve to take iron from here to my steel smelting, which will be here. And then this line will also take the steel back onto the sort of main line. And this junction here, this T-junction, is where the actual output into the main factory will happen. So this junction here, only for the iron trains to my my steel production down here. I think I need maybe 200 or 300 furnaces for that, so about the same size as the copper smelting, which will fit in here just nicely. There's this line running along here and a bunch of radars, but this is completely unnecessary. I'll remove that, and then I have the space here, and then this line is far enough away that I can run this down perfectly, and I don't know, maybe bend around, hook around, I don't know. And I've decided I'm going to launch the rockets right here and make a landfill bridge, just wide enough for the necessary number of trains. So 4 trains. 5 trains actually. 4 trains to input the 4 resources required for the rocket. That would be low density structure, rocket fuel, and rocket control units, and satellites. Even though satellites you barely need any, so that, yeah, but that I'll make a separate line for that just to be consistent. And then finally a 5th line, which will take the space science that I produce and output it and carry it over to my actual research location, which I'm not sure yet where I put that. I'll try to find a cool place where I can make it look interesting. But yeah, rockets will be launched from the middle of this lake. I think that's a cool idea, and I have enough landfill to do that. But yeah, I think that's about it. It's kind of a shame. I have some very nice ore patches. I really love this crude oil patch right here. 72,000 yield. That's massive, but it will never be used. I'm not mining any of the resources down here. The resources will be grabbed from up here, except for maybe coal, as I said, for plastic. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the episode, despite it being quite boring, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.